What's going on, U.S. History people? This is Mr. Norris.
And Mr. Lawrence.
And we got video number 14 for you. Early changes in America. A lot of economic things are happening, and Mr. Lawrence is going to tell us about the early American economy.
All right, so early on, we studied the growth of nationalism. We're starting to see the growth of the American economy and also shifts with culture in the United States. So we're going to quickly review some of these key ideas you need to know for your exam. So shifts in early American economy. Things we need to know is what's happening is the United States really started off as a strong agriculturally based economy. But as technology starts to change and as the economy starts to change, we start to move towards more of what's referred to as a market economy that's based on interstate trade across the country. And we know the difference between intra and inter. Intra is within a state, inter is across states. So we're seeing more trade across states as history starts to move forward. Changes in transportation will allow for more efficient movement of goods and people. So the development of things like railroads, canals, the steamship will allow goods to be moved much more efficiently and effectively to get goods to markets. We'll see the growth of banks that help develop an investment of capital and help to buy goods and services. Mr. Norris, do you know what the bank that we've talked about through this course so far that's been very important?
Bank of the United States or the bus?
The bus, that's right. Controversial to some, important to others, but those banks help to grow the economy at this time. Also, there becomes this kind of shift from more of a traditional, what was referred to as a household economy, or maybe more of a subsistence style of economy, where members of the household would produce goods within the home itself. Also, goods themselves were produced and used for the household consumption. So with the growth of the market economy, workers will start to specialize in specific tasks in exchange for labor and money. So much like the modern economy we have today, where you have a job where you might be trained or specialized in it, and then you are paid for carrying out that job. Goods are then produced to sell on the open market and make profits, much different than just subsistence, where your household only makes what you need, you consume what you need, and that's it.
All right, so let's talk about the American system created by this gentleman pictured here, Henry Clay, and it is supported by President John Quincy Adams. The goal of this was to establish better national transportation systems. So he really wanted to focus on the government building roads and canals. Henry Clay would support something like the Erie Canal, which connected Albany to Buffalo. And tariffs would be used to help support American manufacturing, this idea of a tax on foreign goods. And it would also raise money for the government, which they could turn around and spend that money on roads and canals, that infrastructure. So he's connecting tariffs with internal improvements or infrastructure. And the last part is the creation of a second national bank or bus. The first bus expired after 20 years. The second one will go into effect for 20 years. So 3 parts of Henry Clay's American system: the Bank of the United States, internal improvements, and tariffs.
Oh, Andrew Jackson's really going to like that second bank, I bet.
Not at all.
All right, so continuing to look at some changes within American society, we see industrial and transportation revolutions that happened throughout Europe, specifically in places like Great Britain, and spreads throughout Europe, eventually makes its way across the Atlantic to the Americas as well. So we see the development of a factory system really in the north. So the northern economy will have some agriculture, but will slowly start to change towards more manufacturing and industry. And it happens in the north for a couple of reasons. There's a significant amount of natural resources, specifically coal and iron, and also natural geographic features like rivers allow the transportation of goods made in those factories. Specifically, an example that we see at this time period is in New England, the creation of textile mills. Mr. Norris, do you know what a textile is?
A textile is a piece of clothing or something made out of cotton or cloth.
That's correct. Very good. So agriculture will continue to grow in regions like the West and the South. Now, transportation changes will be important to shifting towards a market economy based on manufacturing. So one thing we see is the development of steam power and the steam engine. This development of this power allows ships to go against currents. Now today, in our modern times, we might think that's pretty basic, but for the time period we're studying, this was a huge invention and allowed much more freedom of travel through rivers and even on the ocean. Canals will be important, which are man-made waterways. The big one that we need to know for this course is the Erie Canal that will connect New York City to Lake Erie and then out to the west, which will drastically drop the cost of goods in the west and help to support trade. We'll see the growth of national roads. So we'll also see the investment in roads, things like stone and gravel, to help migration westward. And finally, one of the big inventions and developments will be the development of railroads. The U.S. will actually be one of the countries in the world by the 1840s that really has the most railroad track put down. And this will be a huge factor in supporting westward migration and the growth of the economy, being able to move goods very quickly and much more efficiently.
Choo choo! All right, labor in the United States. So we have the growth of a factory system, and this will create a need for paid workers known as free labor. Now, if you look at free labor, you might think that it means that people are giving their labor away for free or as slaves. It doesn't mean that. What it means is you are free to exchange your labor for compensation or money. Now, with the growth of factory systems, we'll see the development of urbanization or urban or city areas. We'll see children that are working in these factories, and then immigration as well. Specifically, we'll see people like Irish and Germans immigrating to the United States and working in factories. Now, in the South, we're going to have the continued development of the plantation system. Eli Whitney will invent this machine here, the cotton gin, which will sadly drastically increase the demand for slavery in the United States. This will continue to make cotton a valuable cash crop and will increase slavery. Now, as slavery increases and their cotton production increases, there will be a westward migration for more land. People will want to buy more land and grow more cotton on land to make more money. And cotton will become 1/2 of all American exports during this time. It not only will be used in northern factories, but it will be shipped to Europe as well.
All right, so moving on, we're looking at changing role of women as the 1800s continue. So we see a shift with the market economy, allowing more women the opportunity to transition away from traditional domestic roles into working opportunities outside of the home. So we also see the development of public schools that will really be pushed by women reformers. We see support set up for the mentally ill. Specifically, Dorothea Dix helped to establish hospitals. Abolitionism, also a major reform movement of the mid-1800s, which is very important. Please star circle this movement. It was the anti-slavery movement prior to the Civil War. Some important women to know that supported this was Harriet Tubman, who was an escaped slave who actually went back into the South to help escort slaves to the North and eventually to freedom in Canada. She was considered a conductor on the Underground Railroad, which was a group of safe houses that ran from the South to the North, ultimately to Canada. Two other women we should know are Angelina and Sarah Grimke, sisters who were also very influential abolitionists. At this time, we also see the growth of the first modern women's rights movement. So women like Elizabeth Cady Stanton and Loretta Mott organized the Women's Rights Convention in Seneca Falls. We see the Declaration of Sentiments, which pushed for the legal equality for married women. And finally, Susan B. Anthony, a very important reformer who will be also pushing for women's suffrage. So the idea of the changing role of women starts in American history around the 1840s and continues throughout the rest of the course.
All right, political democracy in America. We see the development of the two-party system. This is your Whigs and Democrats, and this will help unite the nation over large geographic areas. People will unite and identify themselves as members of different political parties. If you remember the first political party system, we have Federalists and Democratic Republicans. The second one is Whigs and Democrats, and this is the same Democratic Party, at least the name today, as back then. During this time, we see a more democratic system. In the 1820s, many states are removing property requirements for voting for adult white males. So we have universal adult white male suffrage, still a very tiny portion of the population, but it's moving in the direction of including more American citizens. In 1828, we have a huge increase in voter turnout for this guy pictured here, the former general and 7th President of the United States, Andrew Jackson. And in 1832, candidates are chosen by a convention system. And then we also have the introduction of a secret ballot, so people don't know who you are voting for. And then use of newspapers, slogans, rallies, etc. to support campaigns. So you would see each political party would really have their own newspaper that would help promote their ideas. They would have slogans, things like "Let's get the ball rolling." That was a slogan used from the 1840 election. And then political rallies as well.
So prior to this time, Mr. Norris, when it came to politics and elections, so you wanted to try and be
more reserved.
Yeah, that's right. But at this time, now where we see modern politics in the United States, where you have rallies, you have campaigns, you have advertisement, that really gets its start during this time period with guys like Andrew Jackson.
And then finally, we have the spoil system, which is
Not reserved.
not reserved. It's giving government jobs to political supporters. So it's giving people jobs not because they're qualified, but rather because they supported a certain candidate.
All right, so let's do a quick recap of this video. So again, please understand the difference between household versus market economy. Understand what the American system was, where we focused on tariffs, transportation, and
Bank, the bus.
The bus, that's right. Development of the American transportation systems. We talked about canals, roads, railroads,
Choo-choo.
all that good stuff to get goods to the market and people to where they need to be. Labor in the North and the South, the difference between free labor and also slave labor in those regions. The changing role of women, having really pushing for major reforms in America prior to the Civil War. And the development of the democratic political system. So we've seen the two-party system in action and the change and starting to see a push for more democracy in our system. And we start to see also the development of the modern political system. And we'll also see the spoil system under Andrew Jackson giving government jobs to political supporters.
All right, guys, thanks for watching. Look forward to see you back for the next video on Andrew Jackson. Thank you, and have a good day.